Lions Nation, what is going on? Welcome to the Lions Pulse. I'm your host, Miko. Super excited to be here with you guys today. A little bit of a later stream. I got a good reason for it. I'll get to it in a minute, before I start explaining myself on why I can't be on time for my own stream. But if you are new to the channel, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. That'll let you know anytime I upload a video or anytime I go live. Again, that all of those things really help out the channel. Also, be sure to hit the like button on this stream because we got a lot to talk about, and I'm super excited to be here with you guys. Like I said, running a little late, but I have a good reason for it. At least I think a reason that is respectable. So every Monday, since my kids are like it's summer, they're out of school and everything like that. Every Monday, my mother-in-law comes by to hang with the kids, and my mother-in-law is probably like the dopest mother-in-law in on the planet, like by far best mother-in-law I could have never asked for, right? I wouldn't have even known what to ask for if I had gotten someone as amazing as her. But I actually enjoy spending time. I actually enjoy like kicking it, hanging and talking to my mother-in-law. We talk Marvel, we talk comics, we talk life. Like, so I basically just got caught up, spending time with her. And then next thing you know, I'm like, oh shoot, it's already going on 6. I still got to do Pride of Detroit stuff. And then I still got to hang out with you guys. So had to, wrap things up with my mother-in-law. Ended up, doing the Pride of Detroit video, which will post tonight. So if you want some in-depth training camp analysis from today's camp, definitely head over to Pride of Detroit later tonight. That'll post probably in the next 30 minutes or so. But yeah, well, probably like in the next hour, because obviously I'm going to finish doing this stream before I finish posting that. But that's basically why I'm late. So I'm here with you guys. Really excited to be able to talk a little bit of training camp. We're not going to go through like the day-by-day stuff because so much of training camp has kind of already gone by. So if you saw the title, if you saw the thumbnail, basically I'm going to highlight some of the players that have stood out the most to me, and then we can have a dialogue. You guys can let me know who you've been most excited to hear about or who you've been most disappointed that you haven't heard about, and we can definitely have a conversation about it in the chat. But a lot of people are already jumping in the chat, so I want to give my shout outs to everybody that's took out the time to hang out with me. I know it's a little bit later, but again, appreciate you guys kicking it with me tonight. First in the chat, Det Famine saying Miko, and then he says sorry, perhaps a little bit too enthusiastic. Hey, listen, man, anytime that if you guys can bring that energy, it'll definitely help for me. Again, long day of work already coming into the chat, so with that in energy, definitely going to feed off of that. So shout out to you, Det Fan Man. Shout out to Casey saying good evening, hoping all is well. Everything's good, Casey. Like I said, feeling good. Love being able to spend time with my family. So yeah, and now I get to hang with you guys. So it's been good. Got to pump out some Lions content, and I get to talk some more Lions today. Get to go a little more in depth, a little more off the cuff a little bit. So really excited. Perry in the chat saying, hey Miko, how are you doing today? Again, I'm doing good, man. I cannot complain whatsoever. It's a Monday, but I had a good weekend, and so again, the fact that I get to come and hang out with you guys is definitely a highlight of the day. Casey saying poor Shane Zylstra didn't think Lions carry 4 tight ends anyway, but wish he had the chance to earn a roster spot, even if on another team. Yeah, no, definitely. That news dropped. I want to say about probably close to an hour ago. Shane took from what I'm hearing coming out of camp, took a low hit, not a dirty hit, but just again one of those hits that you definitely don't want your players putting on each other, in camp, because it definitely increases the likelihood of injury. So definitely feel bad for Shane in that regard. I think they're saying he'll be out about somewhere in the range of 4 to 6 months. So yeah, definitely hoping for a speedy recovery. But I mean, it definitely does open up some opportunities for guys like James Mitchell. Obviously, Sam Laporta has been killing it in training camp, but at the same time, Brock Wright, it might actually open up a roster spot for someone of the likes of like Jason Kabinda. Just again, depending on like what the Lions want to do with their tight ends, what they want to do with the fullback. So it kind of sucks that like you kind of have to somewhat start to think of that part of it, because again, this is going to be tough for Shane. But definitely hoping for a speedy recovery for him. Grit in the chat with the blue heart, lion emoji, and the football emoji, like always. Shout out to you, Grit. Appreciate you coming through. And yeah, Perry, make sure you make time for family. Listen, that is, I've taken on a lot of different things. Obviously, this summer, and definitely for the rest of this year. But I think the number one thing for me will always be family. Obviously, trying to make time for family. But again, I love doing this, and I'm so blessed and fortunate that I have a wife first and foremost that allows me to do this and allows me to um, split up my time and dedicate it to a number of different things. But she'll be the first one to tell me, family comes first. So definitely got to stay on top of that. Uh, Perry, really quick, yeah, before we jump into the topics, any news on the UDFAs we signed? So before I get into my list of guys that have stand out, I'll address this really quick. So of the UDFAs that have really stood out, so first and foremost, we gotta start with Starling Thomas, right? Starling Thomas has by far um, had the most hype about him throughout training camp so far. Again, AG AG had his media session today, and so I'm not going to put too much stock as far as where guys are lining up because he said not to. And I respect the hell out of AG. I think he's an amazing coach. Obviously, I've said on this channel that he has to, help this defense perform. But as a person and just as a coach, I really do respect AG. I think he's awesome. Um, but so yeah, he said not to put a lot of stock in where guys are lining up, but I'll at least say Starling has taken reps. So again, he's taken reps against some of the starters and he's held his own at times. Obviously, today was probably one of his better days if we're looking at an individual standpoint. Matching up against JMO, making it really difficult for JMO, obviously frustrating him to the point where they got into a little bit of a scuffle. So Starling Thomas is by far probably the corner that or the UDFA that's making the most headway so far in training camp. And I kind of said this even coming out of like OTAs and minicamp, the way that like reports were coming out about Starling really reminded me a lot of Jerry Jacobs. And it's funny because Aaron Glenn basically pointed out the same thing in his press conference today. Is like, yo, there's a lot of similarities between Jerry and Starling and it's a credit to like their scouting department and things like that to go out and find guys with similar traits. So Starling is by far, again, whether it's on defense, he's been like one of their top choices for being a gunner on like punt coverage and things of that nature. So Starling is probably currently, as of right now, for me, is probably the UDFA that is most likely to make the roster. Next, one that's probably again making some plays, making some headway. Probably doesn't have as much of an alleyway to a roster spot is Stephen Gilmore. I talked about him a little bit on a recent video with Pride of Detroit as far as like as a training camp highlight. But he had a really good day. I believe it was on day 6 of training camp. Uh, Basically had a pick, had a forced fumble, and then was just like really sticky in coverage. Dan Campbell talked about him a bit in his press conference, and they like what he's been putting on tape so far. So again, you have two UDFA corners that are really standing out right now. That cornerback room I feel like is really solid at the top, right? You have your Cam Sutton, you have Jerry Jacobs. Obviously, we're waiting for Emmanuel Mosley to kind of come back from injury. And then you have Chase Lucas, you have Will Harris, who are both, taking reps like literally everywhere in the secondary, like whether it's outside corner, nickel, safety. Those guys are kind of bouncing all over the place. So if the Lions are looking specifically for guys to help them as far as lining up outside, I think that's where you could see a guy like Starling Thomas or Stephen Gilmore possibly, steal a roster spot from maybe a guy like Chase Lucas or something of that nature, just because they're playing really well on the outside and they're making the most of their opportunities, at least showing that they're competitive, right? Again, it's not so much about where they're lining up or what teams they're, whether it's first team or second team, but just showing that they're being competitive and that they're learning from their mistakes when they make them. And then I think the only other two that I've really heard things. So we have Muhammad Ibrahim, the running back out of Minnesota, and again the running back 3 spot seems to be a tight race between Justin Jackson and then Craig Reynolds. But then if the Lions decide to carry a 4th, well, then I think that's where you could probably have a discussion whether it's like Craig Reynolds or Ibrahim. There's a bit of a battle there. But it really just comes down to, again, what the Lions are going to do. Because I think even if they decide to carry 4, it's right now, I think it would still be Craig Reynolds' job. That's who they would probably prefer to carry, because Craig Reynolds is having a good camp as well. But again, so is Ibrahim. Again, making plays, not making a whole lot of mistakes, not shining like in the biggest way again to overtake any of these vets. But if we're talking about just like, hey, how are the UDFAs performing? He's performing well. And then I believe it was Dylan Drummond, the wide receiver out of Eastern. He had a really good day today. So again, another UDFA that's at least again making plays, right? Again, nothing drastic, but I mean, at this point, at this stage in training camp, especially if you're a UDFA, simply catching the eye of the coaching staff and making plays and making the most of your opportunities. Drummond specifically, I saw in Eric's notes as far as a training camp observation, like he beat Tracy Walker a couple times in just one-on-one drills. Again, one-on-one is something obviously separate from the team drills, but again, when you're at least showing that ability to get open, then you can at least probably start opening doors for opportunities to get more snaps, to get more reps in 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, and definitely once training camp comes around, you can probably open the door for more opportunities. So those are probably the UDFAs that are standing out the most currently. And like I said, I think Starling Thomas has the best chance of making the roster currently. And then probably like right after that, it's Stephen Gilmore with like a little bit of distance between him and Thomas. And then there's probably a really big gap between Gilmore and anybody else. For me personally, I think there's a pretty big gap. So yeah, that's how the UDFAs are currently, stacking up, and that's kind of how things are currently looking. But I want to get into for at least the purpose of this stream, like I said at the top, instead of going through every single day of training camp, because it's last stream I did was on Wednesday, so to try to recap Thursday, Friday, and Saturday's training camp as well as today's, I think we'd be here all night, and then it'd be kind of tough for me to recall everything. I'm not great at taking notes, but obviously, if you want to know like specifically, like again, how those days have gone, I've definitely done some observations and stuff like that over at Pride Detroit, so you can definitely check those out. But specifically talking about like, hey, what players have stood out to me? What guys have really got me excited? What guys have me feeling like, hey, when the Lions head into the season, like they have a good group of guys. I have about 10 guys here that I've written down. And I want to go through all of them if possible. Again, time permitting and stuff like that. But yeah, let's kick that off. And again, if you guys have comments, if you guys disagree with the list, if you guys disagree with the person I throw up here, or if you have a question about somebody not being on the list, definitely throw that in the chat and we can talk about it. So I got to start off the bat, and this one might seem a little weird, just because he hasn't got to practice a ton, but I gotta go with CJ Gardner-Johnson as like probably the player I'm by far I've been most impressed with as training camp has kind of got kicked off here. Obviously he had the injury scare and he missed a few days, and we were fortunate that it wasn't anything serious, but CJ has, and for those of you guys who have watched this channel for a while, you guys know how I feel about CJ as far as what he could mean for this defense, as far as being that emotional leader, being that spark plug for the defense. I feel like early in camp he was already starting to show that, right? Like he's a player where his bark absolutely matches his bite, and so he was starting to put that out there and kind of rallying the rest of the defense around his level of play. Then the injury happens, and we go through that little bit of a limbo phase of trying to figure out like how serious it is, and then we find out it's not. But then he just remains consistent as far as being a consistent presence. And while he's not practicing, again, according to his words, when he finally met with the media coming back from that injury, like, no, he wasn't being able to physically practice, but mentally he was there. And he felt that just by being there, by having his presence, around the team, was doing enough. And now he's back on the field, and he's been back on the field for the last few days. And he's literally it just feels like he hasn't missed a beat. He had an amazing day today specifically, right? Just obviously had a great pass breakup on Jahmyr Gibbs, where it's being almost described as like a welcome to the NFL moment. The way that he just kind of closed in on Jahmyr, was able to break up the pass, put a good hit on Jahmyr, and really just kind of show that versatility. And what CJ has done for me personally as a fan is validate the hype, right? there's sometimes like we as fans, we want the Lions to sign certain players, or we as football fans in general, we want our teams to sign certain players, but there's no guarantee that they're going to translate that hype or that excitement that's attached to their name necessarily to your team. It just, it's always about fit and scheme and all of those things. And CJ was someone where it felt like, okay, on paper, this should be a great scheme fit. We know he has this connection with Aaron Glenn. We know he has this connection with Dan Campbell. They know what he's capable of doing, so they should be able to get the most out of him. And then he goes into his press conference, and for me, again, as a fan, he's saying all of the right things. He's saying the things that I was feeling as far as what this defense needed. Someone that was like someone that wanted to lead. And again, not saying that there's no one on this defense that wants to lead, but like he was very upfront and honest and intentional about what he felt that he could bring and wanting to be that leader. And the fact that he's literally delivered on it up until this point, it hasn't just been lip service. He's actually gone out of his way to show it on the field. And obviously, we don't get to see it, but at least from the way it sounds from his teammates, like he's showing it in the meeting rooms, he's showing it around the building by holding guys accountable and things of that nature. So early on, like CJ is by far the guy that I look at and I'm just like, yo, it's early. It's only technically we're only just now kicking up, week 2 of training camp, but he is as advertised. He is absolutely as advertised, and his presence, his play, his energy is one of those things that makes me feel really, really good about this defense going into the season. That with a guy like that, you know, basically like adding fuel to the fire of the other guys around him, or being that spark plug to the other guys around him, it could be the thing that really helps put this defense over the top. We keep talking about how with Aaron Glenn, like this defense can't be, a bottom 5, bottom 10 type defense. Having guys like this that are going to hold the rest of the roster accountable is what you need, in my opinion, to definitely do those types of things. Really quick, shout out to my guy Darth's work saying what up, Miko and Peeps. What's good with you, Darth? Appreciate again, Darth, appreciate all the support that you've had both on this channel and over on Pride of Detroit. Really appreciate all of you guys too that have actually taken the time to support on both channels. Um, it's really meant a lot to me to see you guys again choosing to support on both avenues. It really means a lot. Um, I'm gonna try to say this, and I apologize in advance if I say this wrong. Ranjiv, uh, I have a feeling AG knows how to best utilize CJ. He's going to have a huge year, and I think so too. Like again, you saw it in the press conference when they first signed um, CJ, right? Just the way AG just kind of lit up, the way he talked about him. You can tell that there's a connection there, and you can tell like that helps. Obviously, that helps a player fit in, and it helps a player feel like he can be themselves. Um, and it probably makes it an easier transition into like, hey, this is what CJ is going to bring. And the thing that I love about CJ as well is like he's had this attitude where it's like, yo, you either jump on board or you get out the way type of mentality. And I love that. I think some of my favorite leaders as far as like on the football field, you look at guys like Ray Lewis, you look at guys like Ed Reed, Brian Dawkins, like these vocal, leaders that weren't afraid to basically be like, yo, I'm going to bring this energy and you better make up your mind very quickly if you're going to get on board with it. And so um CJ seems to be bringing that same type of energy, and I'm definitely here for it. Um Really quick, Brian in the chat saying, what side do you feel will be more high powered, the offense or the defense? High powered, I think is the offense. I think high powered is definitely that. Now, high energy is going to be the defense. I think the defense is going to bring like actual juice. There's going to be actual excitement and you know uh some excitement behind their play. But as far as like high powered, I think it's the offense. Especially once they get JMO back from injury. But you look at Amon Ra, you look at Jameer Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Jared Goff, um, Khalif, I think is going to have a bigger role this year, even after JMO comes back, right? I just think, Josh Reynolds, I think that offense has more of a capability to be high powered, and especially to pick up where they left off last year, being a top 5, top 3 offense in the NFL. So that's kind of where I would lean, with that. Um, Perry saying we still need a solid veteran at D tackle. Hope a good veteran D tackle gets cut and we can pick him up. We'll see. we'll see because there's definitely a D tackle on my list that I'm going to talk about. Um, Ward saying, "Good day, mates." Hope I said that right. I think our D will start much better depending on injuries. And yeah, Aaron Glenn said it today, right? Injuries are the greatest equalizer. And so currently, like the Lions have avoided the big stuff outside of Shane Zylstra, obviously, with the knee injury. But as far as serious injuries to key players, they've been fortunate so far. Like I said earlier, like we seriously dodged a bullet when it came to CJ. JMO back at practice doesn't seem to have any lingering effects from his injury. Um, Marvin returned to practice today, so a lot of good things happening again with the Lions in that regard. So number 2 on my list, right after CJ, I'm gonna go with another easy layup, but it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Amon-Ra has been the jump in his play in camp so far has been exactly what you want from a guy that everyone says is a top 10 wide receiver. And again, he doesn't earn that title in camp. He earns that title in the regular season, but you have to put in the work in camp, right? You have to showcase the ability. You have to, you have to be able to put your own defenders in spin cycles and show that they can't cover you so that you can therefore then carry that same confidence into the regular season and basically go up against whoever and give them give them fits as well. So super excited and happy about what I'm hearing from Amon Ra. Obviously we know about the one training camp day where basically catching anywhere between 4 to 6 touchdowns in the red zone, depending on again which source you're checking with. I was told that it was 4 touchdowns. I know originally it was reported that he had 6, but I was told that it was actually 4. But either way, like the fact that he is becoming more of a red zone target for this offense is something that's going to be very needed because again, whether it's simply because they won't have Jamal and maybe they want to do some different things, they don't want to be predictable. I just think Amon Ra is going to be a bigger, weapon. Is going to be a bigger staple for them when it comes to what they want to do in the red zone. He had 6 touchdowns last year, all of which came within the red zone. So if he can take his play from not just being that, but also again getting some of these big plays, being able to be, the yak guy that he is, this is going to really help the Lions come the regular season and really take their offense to another level. Obviously, he's currently like he is wide receiver 1 for this team, no doubt about it. Him and Jared Goff have almost like a psychic link going on at this point, and their chemistry is impeccable. So, and it's been on display. So it's just a matter of again him really just staying healthy because I think he is a guy that once the regular season goes, again, he's going to be one of those guys that helps this offense be high powered. Um, and I really don't see anything really slowing him down at this moment. I think the Lions are going to have an amazing um, set of plays and opportunities to really help him take his game to another level. I think last year he had like just over 1,000 yards. So I'm really expecting him to get somewhere between 1,100, 1,200 yards and probably around the same number of touchdowns, probably 6 to 7. But I just think he's going to have a really big year and have that type of year where again we'll probably go into this offseason and maybe not talk about him as a top 10 wide receiver, but talk about him as a top 5 receiver, in the NFL, not just as a slot. Uh, Darth asking, "What's the rest of your shirt say?" Respect my, and it says melanin, so it has like a bunch of black anime characters. So let me remove that. My bad. So yeah, respect my melanin. So love this shirt. Love a lot of these characters. So I'm a huge anime guy. So gotta. I don't know. I have probably way too many anime shirts if you ask my wife. But yeah, so that's number 2 on my list. Amon Ra has been amazing. Um, Perry saying he is the sun god. I can see him having a superstar year. And I agree. I think he really could. I think that Pro Bowl, obviously he got in there as an alternate. I think he can go into this upcoming season as like a true, like literal, like legit Pro Bowl vote. And not as an alternate. Um, Perry also saying St. Brown and Goff chemistry, building great chemistry. Absolutely. Um, Brian saying, who do you think the next fan favorite will be that ends up getting cut from the team? We have tremendous depth at several positions, and unfortunately, some will be let go. So I've been on this train for a minute, Brian, and it's for me, it's Jason Kabinda, right? And I just think yes, Jason Kabinda has special teams versatility. Obviously, he can play the fullback position, but you also have Brock Wright and you also have James Mitchell. And you also, like, if we're talking special teams, you have Jalen Reeves Maven, you have Anthony Pittman if you just so happen to wanted to keep Anthony Pittman. I just feel like there's other guys that can do what Jason Kabinda could do. And I think again, a lot of people in the fan base love Jason Kabinda. I don't think there's a reason um again, I don't think there's anything wrong as far from a culture standpoint, but I just think as far as what is needed and what can be provided on the football field, I think I think Kabinda's a little bit on the outside looking in. But again, that's personal opinion. I haven't heard much from him in camp, so but again, like he plays the fullback position and he plays on special teams. And so like like he's reliable. And so there's a reason why the Lions would keep him. There's a reason why Dan Campbell would choose to keep him because it's like what you're gonna get out of Kabinda, week in, week out. And so that's probably, but again, my personal preference, or not preference, but my personal choice, that's who would probably be getting cut that fans wouldn't be thrilled about. Number 3 on my standouts of training camp so far has to be Hutch. Has to be Hutch. I don't think there's been a training camp observation yet where Hutch's name hasn't been mentioned. Like he's doing the things that I felt that I needed to see from him going into this upcoming season, which is showcase that you've progressed as a pass rusher, showcase that improvement in strength, in pass rush, planning, and there haven't been many reps that he's lost. There's not many opportunities. There's not many times where you see him, being manhandled. Obviously, like the Lions released the one video where him and Panay had that one-on-one. Panay kind of stymied him on the first one, but then he came back on the second one and like just completely smoked Sewell on the second one. So it's those are the things, and it's with technique, and it's not just with hustle. Again, hustle is going to obviously, yes, serve him well once the regular season comes around. But what he's been showcasing now, and what you hear his teammates talk about how he's stronger, about how he just feels like they feel like he's using his hands better, and he's showcasing more explosiveness. That's the stuff. That's the things that's going to really help this defense. Because if he can win early, and if he can, again, whether it's in the run game or the pass game, be consistently disruptive, then this defense is going to soar. It's the same thing with CJ, where I'm talking about if CJ just brings energy and continues to play at a high level from that nickel/safety spot, and Hutch can be a disruptive force up front, both units are going to benefit, right? The secondary and the front seven are going to benefit so greatly just from the other providing great play. So Hutch is someone that I've been pleasantly, like, really, really excited to hear and see how well and how much he's dominating, because that's literally how it's described. It's not described as like, oh, he had a good day. It's always like, no, he's dominating. He would have picked up a sack. He would have picked up a tackle for loss, or he did pick up a tackle for loss now that they're hitting. So it's just like that consistent level of progression. And so it has me excited. It has me excited for what he's going to be able to do. And now that he has a healthy stable of edge rushers opposite of him to again, whether it's giving him a breather so he doesn't have to play so many snaps, or just having other guys on the other end that can be threats as well. I think he's, again, another guy that's lined up for a really big season. I had a video on this channel where I talked about, like, he's one of those guys that I think could get a Pro Bowl nod. Absolutely. Again, I think it's going to require him to get double-digit sacks, but if he can continue to play the way he's playing now, where again it's a half a sack every game, or it's a sack every game, he can definitely put up some really good numbers going into the season. Word asking, when do the Giants rock up? I believe it's next week. I think is when they'll be practicing against the Giants. I'm pretty sure it's next week. Public Enemy saying, throughout Jared Goff's career, he has always been a quarterback that spreads the ball around. So I doubt if Amon-Ra or any other receiver gets north of 10 touchdowns. Yeah, I don't foresee, like, I think 10 is going to be tough, right? But if anybody could get 10, like if you're going to tell me of any receiver who's most likely to get 10, it's him. And it really just depends on how the Lions choose to operate within the red zone. Because they're going to have so many options. And like I said, all of Amon-Ra's touchdowns last year came from within the red zone, but they're going to have Sam Laporta. They're going to have Jahmyr Gibbs. And again, they could still choose to go with David Montgomery, right? Perry, I saw, like you said, like some people may be sleeping on David Montgomery. David Montgomery is somebody who could technically, quote unquote, vulture some touchdowns from Amon-Ra. So definitely agree with you, Public Enemy. Like he's never been a guy to feel like he has to force a touchdown to a specific wide receiver to get scores. But if he were, and if we're going based off of camp, who's having the most success, Amon-Ra's proven to be unguardable right now. Ranjev saying gonna end up putting Amon-Ra St. Brown on the UAP congressional hearing. Dude's definitely an alien. Dude, it's scary, right? Like the stuff that like the first three guys on this list, CJ, Saint, and Hutch, the things that they've been doing in camp to me border on like that's top tier. That's some scary stuff that you're putting in camp. Again, it's camp. It's, you're not going 100% because again, it's your teammates and you're not trying to hurt anybody. But what these guys are doing and just the consistency that in which they're doing it at is the things that get you excited as a fan. That's like, okay, like, yo, if this translate over to the regular season, the Lions have something. The Lions have something that's going to be exciting. So that's why I gotta have those three guys at the top. Those three are like by far and away been the most impressive through 8 days of training camp. At number 4, I'm gonna give my first rookie out the way. You guys, again, anybody that's been on this channel, you guys know how I feel about Brian Branch. Brian Branch just makes me feel so confident in whatever the Lions choose to do beyond this season with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Like if they decide to keep him, cool, happy with it. You will not hear me complain about it. If they decide to let him walk because they just think he wants too much money, I think you are in amazing hands with Brian Branch based on the way he's been practicing. Like it's gotten to the point where I'm trying to find ways to not talk about Brian Branch because every day it seems like he's doing something. He's either getting a pass breakup, he's getting a sack, he's just being sticky in coverage, he's showcasing versatility, and he's repping with the first team and he's hanging with these starters, and you're just like, man. But then it's the reality that comes in is just like, but where does he play? Like you have CJ, you have Tracy, you have Kirby. Where the heck are you gonna play Brian Branch? And then you hear AG come out and he's like, no, he's gonna play. Like we're gonna use him. And now I just get even more excited because like I don't know where you play him, so I'm just gonna be excited to see him on the field at this point. Brian Branch is by far Brian Branch is going to be the player that I think so many GMs are going to kick themselves on. Like how you let him fall to what did the Lions draft him, like 48? How you let Brian Branch fall that far is going to be like the thing that like owners are going to look at their GMs and be like, the hell happened there? Like, how did this guy fall this far? How were the Lions able to get this many talented players? Because again, when you read the observations of Brian Branch, it's not just the plays that he's making either. It's the fact that he doesn't look overwhelmed. And for rookies, that's usually the thing that gets them, right? It's not necessarily like, maybe sometimes it's the physicality. Maybe it's, they're not in the greatest shape, but a lot of times it's just like, oh, they're mentally overwhelmed and they don't know where to be. And that doesn't seem to be the situation with Brian Branch. Thanks, Ward. It was 45. Appreciate it. So yeah, not 48, 45. Like the fact, like teams are going to wonder. Teams are seriously going to ask their GMs and their head coaches and their scouting departments, like, what was it? And more than likely, I think what you're going to hear is like, people are going to be like, oh, it was the 4-5. Like we didn't. And then I don't know if you guys, I'm sure a lot of you guys saw it, like the rep that he had against Khalif, and he's like step for step for Khalif. And even like Brad, I mean not Brad, Dan Campbell even had to like point to it and being like, yo, like he's out there hanging with Leaf. And like that's not easy. Not a lot of people hang with Khalif in one-on-one drills. So he's a rookie. I'm trying my best to keep my expectations in check when it comes to Brian Branch. But I'd be lying to you if I said like I haven't been every time I get any type of like training camp news, and I see his name pop up, like I light up because I'm just like, dude, like him, Gibbs, Laporta, and Campbell, like those four picks alone currently just feel like, yo, Brad grand slam hit by Barrett in that regard with those guys. So I'm super, super hyped and I'm super excited about Brian Branch and what he's bringing to the table. Shout out to Pride of Detroit. I'm assuming I'm being rated. For those of you guys who don't know, I do stream on both Twitch and YouTube. I do not have Streamlabs set up on this laptop because this laptop can't handle Streamlabs. So we're using StreamYard, but I'm seeing all of the messages come in from Twitch. I don't usually get this many messages from Twitch, so shout out to everybody. No decaf saying raw. Kettle Snacks with the Kabinda emoji. Shout out to Dan saying hey Miko. Um, yeah, JT Sam saying hi, Miko. Again, what's good with everybody? Appreciate you guys joining the stream. Again, I typically stream on both YouTube and Twitch. Today we're basically just going over like again players that I'm most excited about, been most impressed with when it comes to training camp so far. So again, I've already covered CJ was number one on my list. We talked about Amon Ra. We talked about Aiden. I just finished gushing over Brian Branch. But those are the guys that again for me that have 8 days in training camp. These guys have really stood out. But again, appreciate all of you coming by. If you guys are hitting the follow button, I really do appreciate it over on Twitch. It really does. Like again, I spend so much time on YouTube with my YouTube audience that I don't always pay full attention to Twitch. But again, if you're hitting that follow button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, feel free to go follow me on YouTube as well. Again, both of these channels, I'm always streaming on both. So shout out to you guys. I appreciate you all for taking the time to come hang out with me. So yeah, that's Brian Branch. Now, number 5 on my list has got to be Taylor Decker. And Taylor Decker is someone that hasn't gotten like a ton of shine during training camp. He's not been like the focal point the same way that like again, Sam Laporte has gotten talked about a lot. Like I said, Brian Branch has been talked about a ton. Jack Campbell's been talked about a ton. Taylor Decker has gotten some shine here and there, especially now that they have pads on. And the best thing that I can say about Taylor is that he's just this model of consistency when you're talking about this offensive line. I think because we're so excited about Panay, right? And so many of us love what Panay brings to the Lions as far as like, cornerstone future of the Lions organization. But like Taylor's been doing it for a number of years and he's been holding down that offensive line and holding down that left tackle spot. And so going into through training camp so far, like he's looked dominant. He's gone up against, Charles Hare. He's going up against Romeo. He's going up against Aiden. And he's not giving ground to these guys. And that is an amazing feeling because we all know how important left tackles are. They're almost like a quarterback's best friend. So the fact that Taylor is showing that level of dominance and that level of consistency, again, only 8 days into camp, but he's showing it early. It just makes you feel good about that veteran presence on that offensive line. Especially when you have guys like, Panay's out currently with a concussion. Franks obviously has the toe issue. And so they're going to have to manage that. Vaitai has been in and out, kind of with the back issue and kind of having to, they kind of have to monitor him. Taylor and Jonah, right, have been like their most consistent guys on that offensive line, and they're not giving ground. They're again been very solid and strong staples for that offensive line. So I've been really, really excited about everything that I've heard about Taylor. The Lions posted a video today where like it's a play that's meant to highlight Cam Sutton and this amazing pass breakup that Cam Sutton has. And I was watching it, and in the background, you can just see like Decker putting Hutch into the ground. And I'm just like, I don't know how this happened, But when another man basically has you in full mount, like I know nothing about that rep felt great for Hutch. Like nothing about that rep went the way he thought it would. So I got to give a lot of love to Decker because I don't think him and Jonah don't always get the same love and appreciation from the fan base. So I definitely want to tip my cap to both of those guys. Ranjiv saying, was not expecting Decker on this list. Shocked. If you put this on screen, my name is pronounced Ranjiv. Appreciate it. Thank you for helping me out because listen, I have a difficult name too. That's why I just go by Miko because people mess it up. And so I don't want to have to butcher people's names. That's not fair to you. Your parents put a lot of work into naming you. And so I want to be respectful. So appreciate that, Ranjiv, for correcting me. Really do appreciate that. I'm losing track. Number 7 on my list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Number 7 on my list is another rookie, and I got to go Jack Campbell. Jack is someone I've been trying not to take victory laps on because I said back during OTAs when people were kind of questioning Jack and just like, wait, he's not getting reps with the starters. He's not getting first team reps, this, that, and the third. And I was just like, I just think Jack is going to come alive once they put on pads. And since they've put on pads, Jack has done just that. He has been just, again, a man on a mission. He's been this instinctive linebacker that the Lions have talked about. And he's definitely showing that he's not overwhelmed by the moment. And again, when we're talking about rookies, it's not so much about like who they're lined up against or like, again, whether they're on the first team, second team, but it's like, again, are they looking overwhelmed? Do they give you this vibe that they're just not ready for the moment, that they're not ready to go against the starters and things of that nature? And it doesn't feel that way with Jack. They've put Jack in a number of situations where, again, like it could be, he could fold, he could showcase that he's not quite ready. And whether that's him lined up against, lined up next to Anzalone, whether that's him as the only linebacker on the field, whether it's him on the first team, whether him on the second team, Jack has just consistently found ways to make plays. And it has me really excited again for what he's going to be able to bring to this defense. I was shocked to find out, and I when I had heard that Derek Barnes and Alex Anzalone were getting like the first team reps early in training camp, I had just assumed that Anzalone was playing the mic and Derek Barnes was playing the will. Come to find out, it's the opposite. That Derek Barnes is playing the mic and that Anzalone is playing the will. But it's like, now seeing and understanding that Jack is moving up the depth chart and that he's getting more first team reps, it makes me feel even more confident that he will be able to overtake Derek Barnes. I was originally, again, thinking that he was going to have to hurdle Alex Anzalone, and I had a hard time seeing that happening just because of how much the Lions, love and they respect and they trust Alex to be able to lead that defense. But Jack is making his headway and he's starting to really, come into his own. And when you hear him like talk to the media, he just sounds like that classic middle linebacker where you're just like, he's so locked into football that it just makes me feel excited for what he's going to be and what he's going to be able to bring to this team, once the regular season kind of kicks off. Perry in the chat. Wow. Perry in the chat saying, I would say Jackson, the Lions, I would say Jackson Lions resign him. Craig is the guy that you can put on the practice squad or you can cut and resign if there is an injury. Jeez, tongue tied here. I've been saying for a while they need to re-sign Jonah like yesterday. I don't know what's taking the Lions so long. I would love for them to re-sign Jonah before the season kicks off because I think he's that vital. I think no, I'm not even going down the road. He's important. All right. Anybody that's been on this channel, how important I feel he is. When it comes down to like other players that could use a contract extension, I would prioritize Jonah over anyone right now. Jonah is number one on the list who needs to be getting a contract. As far as Craig Reynolds, I don't think Craig Reynolds does make it to your practice squad. Honestly, I think if you cut Craig, like he's getting picked up by somebody else. The Colts just lost, the Colts are dealing with their whole, Taylor situation. Plus they just lost their top 2 running backs, possibly a third. they could use one. The Seahawks are, having issues with keeping their running backs healthy. I just think there's plenty of other teams that would pick up Craig Reynolds and would be happy to have him. I don't know if I can say this the same currently for Muhammad Ibrahim, for Jamar Jefferson. Like those guys, they're fighting it out for RB4, whereas I feel like Craig Reynolds, him and Justin Jackson are clearly battling it out for the RB3 position. So, I don't know if I would risk cutting Craig and thinking that you could keep him on the practice squad. Um Next on my list after Jack Campbell, I gotta mention Jared Goff, because I feel like if I don't mention Jared Goff, someone's going to be in the comment section of this video and accuse me of hating Jared Goff. Um, Jared has been awesome. Like straight up, I think he's only probably had one bad day in camp, and I think it was the day that it was raining. Outside of that, though, he's been efficient. He's been what you need your quarterback to be as they're gearing up for the season. And so you want, for me personally, as someone who was somewhat concerned that the offense could take a step back, not necessarily just because of Jared, but just because I think defenses potentially could have figured out Ben Johnson's scheme. To see that Jared is having that command and that he's finding that rhythm, and it's outside of just Amon Ra, right? That he's making connections with Reynolds and Mims and obviously Khalif, like just being a surgeon with the football, being accurate, being on time, makes you feel good going into the season. Once again, of just like, okay, these guys, he has complete command of the offense, and it makes you feel like, okay, we can reclaim some of that same energy, some of that same momentum that we had last year, with Jared at the helm. So again, outside of the one bad day that it was raining, I mean, it's raining, and that's obviously, yes, a possibility, but obviously, like, the game plan would be different if the Lions were playing in those types of conditions, right? It would be more running the ball, and they would probably find, a different way to deploy Jared Goff in the passing game so that he's not, putting the ball in danger. I guess I would say. But definitely been very impressed with him so far in camp. Like I said, I think he had like the first 4 or 5 days of camp, he was solid until that day that it rained, and then it was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, he's had more misses today, than any of the other ones," where I feel like he probably had, like, 1 or 2 passes, um, that didn't necessarily go his way. Um, Dan saying I guess in regards to why they haven't paid Jonah yet, it might be because they're waiting for Teddy. I don't think the so Nate Sudfeld's not on this list. I guess I could have put him on this list. I didn't, but I talked about this over on the Pride Detroit channel. I do not think they need Teddy Bridgewater, like, at all at this point. I understand why, like, some people want him, and I understand why you would sign him, but I think at this point, I mean, like, your number one concern is that Jarrett stays healthy. So I think to bring in a third quarterback just for the hell of it, just to spend money, probably isn't the best way of going about it. I think signing Jonah would be a greater priority. And if you still have money left over to go get Teddy, then great. But locking up Jonah for the long term should by far supersede any idea of bringing in a backup. Now, if you're signing another starter, then okay, then we can talk about it. If you're trying signing another, if you're signing a starting defensive tackle, if you're signing, honestly, defensive tackles, like, obviously all I got at this point is like the only thing I could see them reasonably spending money on. But outside of that, like, Jonah should be, for the money that they have, and maybe they're waiting to get out of camp and seeing like if everybody's healthy. So Dan, to your point, if there's a reason to wait, maybe it's just to see like, okay, do we take a hit anywhere at a position of need, and then we have this money to go out and get like a quality veteran backup or something of that nature to fill the gap, and not be super strapped and have to go bargain bin shopping, for another player. Grit in the chat saying a real leader wants the best guy on the field, whether it be himself or the rookie behind him. Alex Anzalone will have no problem playing second fiddle to Jack if Jack earns that job. And I agree. I think that's the beauty of not just Alex, but I think of this team in general, right? Is that winning is by far the most important thing. But in addition to that, like, they genuinely want to see each other succeed. So whether it's, yes, you're seeing guys in really tough competition, um, there's still a love for each other and the willingness to help each other succeed. There's not that type of like, hey, setting each other up to kind of fail type of thing. So um, that's again something to be kind of excited about. Um, Getting back to my list, and then I'll get back in the chat after I talk about this player. I got another rookie, and I gotta go Broderick Martin. Broderick is making me again. So this is another guy that we all obviously questioned when the Lions drafted him, right? Third round pick. None of us knew who the hell he was. None of us had ever heard, his name come up in the draft process, and there were a lot of questions about him. But the more the draft went by, the more, and then once I started watching tape on Broderick, I was just like, Brad had to have seen something. He had to have like a really good gut feeling to not only draft Broderick, but to trade picks to get Broderick. And we saw that in the Inside the Den episode that they just aired, where like he was a high target, like, and they were absolutely had no hesitation about going to get him because they just felt that he was that valuable. So going into training camp, he was another one of those guys where it's like, man, I just want to see him with pads on. I just want to see him going up against the first team and finding out, is he overwhelmed? And if he is overwhelmed, be okay with letting him, of all the rookies that the Lions have, Broderick was the one that I was like, hey, he might need to just be okay with getting his butt kicked every day in practice. Like legit. Like he might have to go into every practice, get his teeth kicked in by these vets in order for him to become a better defensive tackle. And according to Aaron Glenn, that's kind of what's been happening, right? Like Broderick is having good reps. He's having good battles with Ragnow and Jonah, and he's having those reps where he's winning. And some of them he's winning very impressive, like in a very impressive fashion. And then there's other ones where he's literally getting probably the crap kicked out of him, right? And he's being dominated because again, he has things to learn. He has to still, understand the whole pad level thing. And I'm sure he's still adjusting to NFL strength and NFL technique as far as where to put his hands and how to come out of stances. But considering that he was an unknown by so many of us coming out of the draft to where he is now, and the fact that again he's becoming one of those players that you're seeing updates about just about every practice because he's just finding ways to make his presence felt on the field. I'm excited about what Broderick is going to be able to do. I think he's definitely going to find himself, somewhere in the rotation. I think he's going to get heavy snap counts, whether it's in relief of Isaiah Buggs or just in certain packages, like Aaron Glenn kind of talked about. Is like there's certain packages where they're going to have for certain guys, and I could see there being a package for Broderick, just with again like every time I see a video of Broderick, his size is ridiculous. I think there was a video that dropped yesterday where it was like him and Isaiah Buggs just working on like uh coming out of their stance. And he's standing next to Isaiah Buggs and he makes Isaiah Buggs just look small. Like, and he's not. Isaiah Buggs is not a small man, but next to Broderick Martin, who was a kid, like that's the other thing that's crazy. Like 21, 22-year-old kid next to this grown man, and he just I don't know. There's a clear and obvious size difference between the two. So Broderick is someone that I'm really, really excited about. Darth Tater saying Broderick plays too high. Absolutely. Also saying he needs to concentrate on pad level and moving his feet. And it is. And I think that's the stuff when you're seeing, like when AG talks about it, when when Dan talks about it, like they don't shy away from praising him, but they are going to point out the fact that like, he's got things to learn. And it's best that they hammer those things out now in training camp, because when he gets in the regular season, like opposing teams are going to take advantage of that. They're going to take advantage of you playing high. You're going to get moved and you're going to get pancaked. And the last thing you want to do is be a man that size being pancaked by a dude that's probably, 3 to 4 inches shorter than you. It's not going to look good on your highlight reel. It's not going to be something that you want your teammates to kind of have to see once they go through the film session. But what Broderick has been putting on tape has me excited. Again, the 3 rookies that I've named, Brian Branch, Jack Campbell, and Broderick Martin, first and foremost are on the defensive side, which gives me a lot of encouragement for the future of this defense. But the one thing that each of these guys have in common is that they've been thrown into the fire against these starters, and they haven't wilted under pressure. They haven't faltered, and they haven't, shrunk in the moment. So it's really encouraging. It's really exciting um, as training camp is kind of progressing. Um, Ranjiv asking best part of Jack Campbell's game looks like he's great in coverage and seek and destroy run stopper. He is my by far the number one thing I have said that is great about Jack Campbell is his ability to cover. Like it's I believe his ability to cover is head and shoulders above any of the other linebackers on the roster. Like it's not even close. As far as what he's able to do in coverage, is specifically zone coverage. Obviously, he's going to have a lot of things to learn as far as man coverage, but when you watch him in Iowa and you watch him play zone, he just has amazing recognition of where he's at on the field, what's happening in front of him and behind him, and is just able to kind of flow in and out of zones and be able to be able to make plays on the ball when it's in the air. So and then yeah, he's really good in run defense as well. I think he is very close to a complete linebacker. I think he could get better with his instincts. I think you can definitely find clips and tape of him where he's a little slow to fire. Um, and there's sometimes where again, like most, I think this is a common trait around linebackers where you become too instinctive. You try to predict too much. You don't trust your eyes enough, and then you find yourself in situations where you flow too far the wrong way. So those are things that Jack has to clean up and become, more consistent in. But as far as just overall ability, no, Jack is great in coverage. He's also great in run stuffing. And I think if this defensive line can continue to progress and get better, he's going to have an amazing season because if they're able to keep him clean, he's the type of linebacker with the type of athleticism that is going to be able to get into the backfield and clean up a lot of trash when it comes down to like opposing running games. I'm super excited about what Jack is going to be able to. And it's one of the reasons why I hope he is a week one starter because I just think he has that much ability. Um Ward asking, can Hooker be ready by end of October? Reports are that he looks good. Probably, right? But I don't think there's a chance that we see him. My running prediction on Hendon Hooker is this. You will not see Hendon Hooker until week 18 when the Lions basically have the division locked up. They already know that like who they're going to be playing in the playoffs, and they're just like, hey, we're going to roll Hendon out here just to see him. Um, at least that's my hope. I would love to see Hendon at least play just one game, even if it's a throwaway. I don't want him to have to play because Jared Goff got injured, but if it's a situation where, like I said, the division's locked up, there's nothing really to lose. Would love to see him out there, especially if there's no concern of him possibly getting hurt any further. Grit saying my only question was W2F does that boy's mama feed him? When it comes to Broderick Martin, right? Like you just know that woman was cooking consistently for Broderick. So that kid is massive. Like it's one of those things where like you could just tell that he was like one of those kids that was walking through middle school. And like even if he had never played football before, like a coach was like, hey, you want to play football? Like it's just ridiculous. I'd kill to be that size. um Brian saying D tackle still worries me because of the lack of depth. One guy goes down and we'll be relying on Covington or Levi. Levi's back in practice, and Levi seems to be looking pretty good in practice these days. So um nothing like again, probably where yes, you would I get your point, Brian. Like, do you want to have to rely on Levi coming off this back injury? Probably not. But again, the fact that he's making progress, the fact that he's first of all at training camp at all, um, is good. Is a great thing. So I mean, I get what you mean. I think we all would love for there to be more depth, on the defensive tackle spot. But I think what they have when you're looking at Aleem, Bugs, Martin, um, Benito Jones has been having a really good camp. I think Dan Campbell brought him up yesterday, like, hey, don't forget about Benito. And again, like I said, Levi's stacking days. Christian Covington is the one guy that I heard hasn't been impressing as much as we thought. So, again, it kind of gives a lot of credence to what Aaron Glenn said today about not giving a lot of like, don't put too much stock into where guys are lining up, what teams they're like, whether it's first team or second team or third team. Because Christian Covington was repping with the first team a lot during OTAs and minicamp, and it doesn't sound like so far in camp that he's been doing, much to put a lot of confidence in him in that regard. Um, Darth Tater saying if he can set his anchor in the middle, he will be a beast. In regards to Broderick, absolutely. And then also saying Campbell in coverage is a beast, taking away passing concept and picking passes. Like that's the other thing too. Like again, it's not just like he plays in zone and it's just like batting passes down. Like he's getting turnovers and he can take them to the house on you. So again, super excited about what Jack is going to be able to bring. Um, Big T in the building. What's good with you, my guy? Saying what up, Delmico? Um, Shout out to you, Big T. Appreciate you asking to be a moderator as well. So again, Big T is one of my moderators over on YouTube. So y'all, treat my guy well. Um, but yeah, let me get back to my list. You guys are awesome with all the comments. So after Broderick, oh yeah, I guess I'm gonna go right back to Jonah. I probably won't spend much the time on Jonah because we talked about Jonah, but much like what I had to say about Taylor Decker rings true for Jonah Jackson. Again, a guy that is just consistent, and is making it hard on these interior offensive linemen or these interior defensive linemen to find, again, opportunities and success in run defense. Jonah is like, I feel like Jonah is kind of like the glue on that offensive line. Again, doesn't get talked about a lot, doesn't get a lot of shine. Obviously has been to a Pro Bowl, but again, he plays next to Frank, and we all know how good Frank is. He plays next to Taylor. We all know how good Taylor is, but like he just doesn't get the same amount of attention. But you like go back and you like break down how training camp is going, and you look at these one-on-one O line versus D line drills, and Jonah's consistent. Jonah's dominating. Jonah's not being moved around a ton. So Jonah is someone else again to me that I feel very, very confident in. Again, I think most of us go into the offseason and we're just like, yeah, you have Panay, so the right side of the line is solid. You have Frank, cool. We got to figure out the right guard spot between Graham and Halapoli Vatai. We got to figure that whole thing out. I would give it to Graham. I think Graham kind of has a bit of an edge over Vaitai currently, but yeah, Jonah and Taylor have just locked down that left side, and it's almost so well, like they've locked it down so well that you don't even have to like pay attention to it. You can literally just know that side is going to be taken care of. Um, and so again, it goes back to why I say, like Mr. Wizard is saying in the chat, resign Jonah like today, right? If I had a direct line to Brad Holmes, I would be bugging him every single day to resign Jonah. So yeah, that's my spiel on Jonah. Um, and then last but not least on my list, right? And then you guys can throw in the chat who you guys, if you guys have questions or anybody that you think should be on this list. This is just my top 10. Has to be Tracy Walker. The fact, again, much like Levi, who wasn't on this list, but how I talked about, like it's a miracle that Levi's even playing right now. I feel the same about Tracy, right? Tracy tearing his Achilles and then coming back and being ready in time for training camp. Like again, a lot of players say that like, oh, I'm gonna be ready, I'm gonna be ready, I'm gonna be ready. And then training camp runs around and they're probably a couple weeks out, or they're not quite participating. Tracy's been a full go from day one of training camp. And when CJ went down with that injury, Tracy immediately filled that void as far as a leadership presence, as far as being vocal, as far as making plays on the field. And so we'll have to see how well his body holds up because, like, again, Achilles injuries are tricky and they linger and they might nag him here and there. But with the versatility that they have on the back end, I think we're going to be able to see a better version of Tracy Walker going into this upcoming season. And again, I got a lot of Tracy's one of my favorite players on this defense, and so I'm super excited. I don't want to say I have high expectations. I just want to see him have a good year. I want to see Tracy have the type of year that makes people forget about the injury, that makes people forget about the contract he was given, because he was deserving of it when he got it. And so again, I think Tracy's had a great camp. Again, filling in for CJ showing that versatility, being another leader on this defense who can lead in a different way, because we talked about it earlier in the show, how CJ is going to lead is going to be very different than how guys like Tracy or Cam Sutton or Alex Anzalone or even Jack Campbell may lead. But Tracy's presence is one that I think this defense still needs, and I still think he can bring some quality things to this group um, once the season kind of kicks off. Let me scroll back up into the chat because I want to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Um, all right, so I got this one from Ward. Can you compare how well this coaching staff teaches football compared to the previous line staffs? I would say this: they teach football. I think that's like probably like the biggest difference, right? And it's not just like, put it this way, they teach their players how to play football. They don't teach them how to necessarily fit within a scheme. And I think that was a big issue with specifically like looking at the Patricia like regime, right? Where it was like, this is my scheme, this is how I need you to play my way. And with the Lions, it's more so like, hey, we're going to make sure you understand the fundamentals first and how to do your job. So if it's defensive tackle, for example, we're talking about Broderick Martin earlier. Hey, we're going to teach you the importance of understanding pad level. We're going to teach you the importance of understanding hand placement and hand technique. And then after we understand and we've hammered out the fundamentals, now we're going to teach you the responsibilities of your job as a three tech, as a nose tackle. This is your responsibility, and this is how you execute your responsibility. It's not so just based off of like how I individually want you to play. It's based off of, okay, this is what we need you to do with the skill set that you have. And so it's, you hear it with both, Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, they all kind of say it, where they draft these players because of the skill set they have. And so it's about teaching them how to maximize their skill set and understanding how to maximize it with the position that they play. So whether it's, like I said, defensive tackle with Broderick Martin, if it's, defensive back, understanding the importance of communication, understanding how to get in and out of breaks if you're a wide receiver, if it's understanding, again, just where you're supposed to be on the field, even as a DB. There's so much that they spend time on with just hammering home the fundamentals that it's it's a very drastic. I think it's a different approach than, again, how some coaches teach it, where it's like, hey, I need you to understand this formation, I need you to understand this scheme, and there's way more attention to detail overall to just playing at a high level in that regard, and being able to limit the opportunities for players to make mistakes on the field. Um, Raymond saying they need to put Hendon in there at the end of the game, that the Lions surely have won or surely have lost this year. I would love it. Like I said, one game. That's all I need. I only need one. And at least give me a feeling of like what the Lions kind of have. Now, that's a double-edged sword in a little bit, right? Because if he goes out there and balls, offseason is going to be ridiculous, because you're going to have a good portion of the fan base that's going to be like, hey, we don't need to re-sign Jared Goff. We just need Hendon Hooker. And then if he completely stinks, then like there's going to be a bunch of angry fans about why we drafted a player like that in the third round. So a bit of a double-edged sword, but I get it. Big T asking, why are we low on depth on a defensive tackle? I just think like I do. I think I understand that some people look at Aleem and Bugs and they're like, okay, cool. You have like, experienced starters there. Broderick is a question mark. Levi has the back injury. Benito is literally somebody that probably works best in a reserve role. You really don't want him starting games for you. So I see why people have questions about it. But I think we also have to keep in mind that there's a lot of other defensive line players, right? Josh Pascal, John Kaminsky, even Hutch a little bit, where like there's a lot of versatility that they can have with this defensive line, where you're going to be able to switch guys in and out depending on fronts, depending on downs and distances. So I understand the argument when it comes to, defensive line and things of that nature, or specifically defensive tackle. I just think the Lions have a good strategy as far as like how they want to attack it and how they're going to address it. Darth Twerk saying, I have a bad feeling we're going to let Jonah walk at the end of the season because we're already paying Decker and Ragnar plus Sewell coming up. True, but you got to figure that out. Like, I think if you're Brad Holmes, I think you can still find a way of paying Jonah. And this is really what it comes down to. And I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because it's going to probably spark a fight in the chat. But it comes down to what you feel like you have to do to retain Jared Goff. which is why I've been saying for a while, like I would prioritize Jonah because keeping that offensive line to me is more important than anything. If you are able to have for the next 4 years, let's say, right? If you're still able to have Decker, Jonah, Ragnow, insert your favorite right guard, and Panay, you're in a really good situation. And to the point where I feel like no matter who's back there playing quarterback, you'll be solid. If you're more focused on making sure that Jared Goff gets taken care of, then yeah, that's when you're probably going to end up having to let Jonah go because you're going to be like, well, hey, we can't keep Jonah and Jared, and we need to also sign Panay, and you also need to sign Amon Ra. Like that's going to be the if we're talking about things that are going to be difficult, it's going to be trying to figure out how the Lions are going to pay Panay and Amon Ra St. Brown in the same year. Um, that offseason is going to be stressful for Lions fans. I can just feel it now. Because I have a hard time feeling like they both get the contracts that they want at the same time. I'm not saying that the Lions don't sign them. I just feel like someone's might get franchise tagged and it's going to be a thing. Um Ryan saying if any weren't to be cut on the O line, I believe that could be Decker in the future. I think in next year's draft they will be looking for a left tackle or a right tackle because they can move Sewell. Brian, I'll say this. I think it's possible in the next 2 years or so that Taylor Decker retires. Like, not even like that he needs to be cut. I think specifically if the Lions like win big, if let's all dream, right? Let's all take an extra sip of Kool-Aid right now. We're gonna dream for a second, we're gonna hallucinate for a minute, and then we're gonna get back to reality. If the Lions win the Super Bowl this year, it's very possible that Taylor could be like, yo, I'm gonna call it a career. Um, because I feel like Taylor feels like the type of guy where he wants to give so much back to the city because he feels like he owes a great deal to the city. And that's awesome. And I honestly, like as a fan, I love him for that. I think he's been so good for the Lions and Lions fans during his time with the team. But I also feel like there's been just moments in interviews and the way that he talks about his family and his daughter and just life in general, where I sometimes feel like, man, I feel like if Taylor were to capture like what capture a Super Bowl, I wouldn't be surprised if he turned around and be like, yeah, I'm gonna call it a career. At what Taylor's like 28, 29, 30, something like that, like relatively young, but like I just wouldn't be surprised. But if we're talking about him just being cut, I don't know if that happens in the next couple of years. Like I think Taylor's still playing at a super high level. Um, Now if something comes up where like his contract is up and they're having to choose between him and Panay, then maybe. Um, Tony Chase saying, "Damn, I was hoping I heard Mims ringing bells on this list. I think he's perfect. I think he's the perfect DJ Chark replacement for Ben's offense." I'll say this, right? Mims has been having a good camp. I still think he's in that same range of like working his way, like he's battling near the bottom, right? And so to one respect, he is definitely having a good camp, but you're still like, you know, Josh Reynolds, Amon Ra, Jamo when he returns, Khalif, like those guys are still ahead of him. Marvin. So like that's five guys right there. And so we're talking about a potential wide receiver six. And so yeah, Mims could be in the mix. And he'll probably get a good amount of snaps, once Jamo is suspended. But I get it, right? I get the allure, and I think he's put a lot of good things on tape and put a lot of things on the field during camp so far. Um, that at least I could see why he would probably have a role somewhere on the defense or on the offense once the season rolls around. Um, Nathan Chappell saying, I hope Goff can see the benefits of keeping this team together. And I think I think that's what a lot of us are going to have to hope for, right? And he's also saying, again, Decker's not easy to replace. I agree, right? Like, and so I want to say that Jared Goff does. That he like, if you were asking me today, I would say Jared Goff understands the importance of keeping the band together, and not trying to become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, right? Um, but it really just, but you just never know, right? Like, there's so many things that could play a factor into that. Like him and Ben Johnson have a really good relationship. He's found a lot of success under Ben Johnson. if Ben Johnson were to take a head coaching job somewhere else and Jared Goff was able to leave in free agency, do you think that he would probably entertain the idea of going to play for Ben Johnson? Maybe, right? Like, I don't it's just not out of the realm of possibility for me personally. Not saying that it's pure speculation on my part. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think in order for this team to be well built for the future, I think keeping that offensive line is together is the most important thing. And then beyond that, that's probably going to require Jared Goff to take some kind of pay cut. Huggy Bear in the chat saying if Goff leads the Lions to a division title and a couple playoff victories, then why should he take a pay cut? And again, Huggy, that's a good point, right? He doesn't have to take a pay cut. The only reason to take a pay cut would be like, hey, do you think that you can win with the Lions trying to work around your contract? And that's essentially like the conversation. Um, Again, Nathan Chappell's kind of saying it in the chat, and I'm sure other people are pointing it to it as well. That was one of the reasons the Patriots were able to be successful for so many years, right? Tom Brady kept taking, team friendly deals but taking team friendly deals works well when you're winning Super Bowls. So to Huggy Bear's point, all right, if the Lions aren't winning Super Bowls, but Jared Goff is one of the reasons that they're still winning, maybe there's not an incentive there for him to be like, oh, I'm going to take a pay cut. And so it's tough, right? And I think that's what's going to make it really difficult when the Lions have to make that decision on whether or not they're going to choose to extend Jared Goff long term. I think through 2 years with the Lions, he's at least giving you obviously the first year was rebuild and everything like that. Last year, he gave you a lot of reason to be confident. This year, he's going to really probably put a stamp on it on whether or not there's a for sure reason to extend him long term. So um, I'm definitely interested in seeing how that all plays out. All right, I'm gonna get a couple more in, and then I'm gonna bounce for the night. I still haven't eaten dinner, so I gotta do that whole thing. Um, Brian saying we still don't know who the kicker will be this year. Has there been any more out of camp how they are doing? So as far as like, I mean, again, reports coming out of camp, they're both playing really well. Right. Parker Romo, Riley Patterson have both been just doing like they're hitting their kicks. I think the final count, because I know like the guys at Pride Detroit have been keeping like a tally. Um, I believe both kickers were perfect today. Um, I think they both missed a kick so far in camp. So it's really, for me, it's really probably going to come down to these preseason games. How do these kickers kick in the preseason game? But personally, with the Lions cutting Badgley, I still believe it's Riley Patterson's job to lose. Personally, I still do, and I think the Lions saw what Riley Patterson did with the Jaguars, and I think they had a little bit of buyer's remorse. And so I know they're going to definitely like take a really hard look at Parker Romo. Obviously, he has the big leg and everything like that. But Riley Patterson has proven to be consistent. And I think if you leave it up to Dan Campbell and if Riley is consistent in these preseason games, it's going to be Riley's job. Like plain and simple. Um Mickey Ross saying, is Emmanuel Mosley going to play by week 4? We'll see. Obviously, I think he just reported to Allen Park today. So again, it's all gonna be about how he progresses. I don't know. The Lions haven't come out with a timetable for him yet, so I can't say definitively like he will or he won't. Um, what I can say is this team has never been big on rushing guys back from injury, right? So Emmanuel Mosley will be back on the field when they feel like he's able to play at his best without hurting himself and without compromising the team. So if that's week 4, it's week 4. If it's week 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever the case may be, um, they will definitely not put him out there before he's ready to really play and contribute. J Russ asking the question over on Twitch: who's a guaranteed cut in your opinion? Ugh. I'm assuming you mean like somebody important too. Like I can't take like a layup here and just say Christian Covington. Um, a guaranteed cut. I would say a guaranteed cut as of today. is probably Julian Okwara, and I hate saying that. I really do, because I really do like Julian. I think Julian, it would be a great um addition to this defense. I think he just can do so many things, with his versatility. But I just don't see how the Lions carry that many edge rushers. You know what I mean? Like you have Aiden, you have Pascal, you have Charles Harris, you have Kaminsky, you have Romeo Okwara, you have James Houston. Like that's six already. I As much as I would love for them to find a way to keep Julian, Julian feels like the odd man out. And it's simply because James Houston is such a much is head and shoulders better than him as a pass rusher. Like, and so I think that's going to be the thing. If I had to say today, like it feels like it's Julian as of right now. And again, if I'm not taking like layups, if I'm not picking like a UDFA or anything like that, it's yeah. Um I'm gonna get one more and then I'm gonna get out of here. Um Perry, you get this last one. Miko, do you feel at all Ben Johnson? Wait, do you feel if at all Ben Johnson for Goff better play, or do you feel we have a guy that can help Goff if Ben Johnson leaves? Okay, so do I think that Ben Johnson is basically the key to Jared Goff's success? Personally, yes. I personally believe that Ben Johnson gets the very best out of Jared Goff. And I don't know, put it this way, they do have a guy that's been working under Ben the last couple years, Tanner Edgerton, I want to say. Uh and he's now the new like passing game coordinator. And so the thought process is that like, hey, if Ben Johnson leaves, that's who's going to replace him. Um and so if he's already been working with Goff these last few years, there's there's reason to believe that that could be a seamless transition, right? From Ben Johnson to the next OC. I just really feel like Ben and Goff have a really good connection. And so I'm not sure from an offensive coordinator position, because Grit, I see what you're saying. Mark Brunell doesn't get enough credit as the QB coach. Absolutely, probably doesn't, right? For at least helping Goff along. But in terms of just like again how play calls are made and things like that, like if you get a new OC, he's going to want to call the game the way he wants to call it, and not many OCs are going to be like, oh, I'm going to call it the same way Ben Johnson did. They're going to try to put their own wrinkle on it. They're going to try and do things differently, but there's a blueprint on like what Jared Goff likes and how Jared Goff can succeed. So, but again, to answer your question directly, I do feel like Jared benefits greatly from having Ben Johnson. Thank you, Nathan Ekstrand. Thank you. I knew it started with an E. I just couldn't remember where all the consonants went. Um, but yeah, like that's so yeah. To answer that question, I think Jared benefits greatly from having Ben Johnson. I'm not saying that he would fall off a cliff, right, from not having Ben Johnson. I just think that Ben gets and not just the best out of Jared. I think Ben Johnson gets the best out of everybody on that offense. Um, so yeah, that's kind of just yeah, that would be my answer on that one. But with that said, guys, I appreciate all the feedback. I enjoy having you guys in the chat. Shout out to Pride of Detroit again for the raid. Uh, and everybody that came over from Twitch, everybody that followed on Twitch. If you're on YouTube and you haven't hit the like button, please do that. Again, it greatly helps out the channel. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that as well. And again, if you want to see more content from me, again, I try to upload content here. I haven't made any original content here in a minute, so I gotta, put that into motion. But if you ever want to see any more content from me, you can definitely check out the Pride of Detroit channel. Doing a good amount of content over them for that as well. So again, appreciate you guys so much. Hope you guys have an amazing night. And yeah, I will catch you guys in the next one.